Day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. Lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Now, okay, I just want to clarify something because there's a lot of fake news going on around the place about the Loving Life channel going forward. So get it from the horse's mouth, okay? Don't listen to the crap that you hear on other fake news. Just as an update on the channel going forward, I am not leaving. I am not leaving. I hear another YouTube channel based in the US suggested I'm shutting down Loving Life. That is fake news. I will probably still be doing more work each day on my channel than he will or ever has done. But I will now be focusing on live streams, as well as investigating, then exposing corruption or criminal activity in South Africa. I will no longer be responding to all individual emails as I have in the past. My eyes just cannot cope with the workload. As my focus in the future will not be so much on news, but be on exposing criminal activity or political parties with a focus on the EFF and the ANC that the mainstream is not covering. That is what I will be talking about in my videos going forward. If you have an interest in participating in a live stream, please email me or Marlena with details so that we can look at it and get back to you. Live stream subjects can be anything from fundraising to exposing corruption to discussing a specific topic. Please do not send Marlena an email if you're not contacting her about a possible live stream. She received 300 emails yesterday and needs to focus on our live streams going forward. So please, guys, just respect that. I'm winding down the news videos. Yes, I publish because of the hours I spend in front of the computer. I'm doing that to save my site, but will still be posting videos on this, the main Loving Life channel. Let that be fully understood. The Loving Life channel is not shutting down. And if I do transition it, I will probably hand it over to someone else to continue. But that's something we'll look at going forward. So if anyone suggests I'm shutting down the main Loving Life channel, then that is fake news. We will be moving off YouTube in the future because this platform is politically compromised and not a dependable place to archive videos. Now, I've got that off my chest. I feel a lot better. Please spread the news. Let everybody know the Loving Life channel is not shutting down. Okay? Get that. Let's get that very clear. Whew. Okay, tonight I'm speaking to Michael Lombard about the court action he has taken out demanding that the Boer republics be returned to its own people. I'm going to play you a video giving some background to this subject. Then we'll get Michael on. Here we go.
No time for rest.
We are not calling for the slaughtering of white people, at least for now.
No way to forget. Around the shadows creep, like friends they cover me. Just wanna lay me down and finally try to get some sleep. We carry on through the storm, tired soldiers in this war. Remember what we're fighting for. Meet me on the battlefield, even on the darkest night. I will be your sword and shield, your camouflage, and you will be mine. Echoes of the shots ring out. We may be the first to fall. Everything could stay the same, or we could change it all. Meet me on the battlefield. We're standing face to face with our own human race. We commit the sins again, and our sons and daughters pay. Our tainted history is playing on repeat, but we could change it if we stand up strong and take the lead. When I was younger, I was named a generation unafraid. For the heirs to come, be brave and meet me on the battlefield. Even on the darkest night, I will be your sword and shield, your camouflage, and you will be mine. Echoes of the shots ring out. We may be the first to fall. Everything could stay the same, or we could change it all. Meet me on the battlefield.
Okay. Very, very moving video by Valdrick. I love his videos, and he's a good friend of this channel. Now, let me get our guest on. I'm going to get Michael Lombard on so we can start talking about the fight back. Here we go. Hi, Michael.
Good evening, Scott.
How are you?
Very well, and yourself?
Excellent, thank you. Excellent. Now,
Yes,
Michael, we're going to have a very interesting discussion about a court action that you are leading. But before we get into that, please tell us a bit about your background.
First, good evening to all the listeners this evening, and thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to use your platform to get this message out. My background, Scott, in short, is I'm Afrikaans speaking, as you can hear. I speak English with quite a heavy accent, but I can speak English. And
your English is excellent.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the compliment, Scott. I'm an admitted attorney, and I specialize in land and property law, the law of property. I also hold a master's degree that I did at University of Pretoria in real estate, and I did my thesis on the topic of that value in land per se constitutes a fundamental right. And so I'm a guest lecturer at University of Pretoria. I lecture the legal aspects that influence value of property, and I'm quite involved with various property-related litigation.
Right.
So that's my background, and then also my involvement with this specific court case. I must say my background is also, and I say it with the greatest honor to our Creator, that my background is also that since I was small, I had good faith. I'm a believer. I'm also a great sinner, but I'm also a great believer, and I believe in God and the three unity in God, and also that I believe in the prophecies. And as I grew older, I did various studies in the Bible, and I realized that, living here in South Africa is not only here for myself to practice law, but, we have a real purpose, and we have an objective here. And then also by the grace of God, about 4 years or so ago, or I would rather say yes, about 3 or 4 years ago, I started an in-depth study in regards to our history. And it's almost like when someone realizes that, that he's a believer and he repents. That's what happened to myself with our history. My eyes opened, and I realized that our history in South Africa, it is in line with various prophecies in the Bible, and specifically and how important the covenant of Blood River and the subsequent covenant of Paardekraal. It was a reinstatement of the Blood River covenant.
Okay, we'll get on to those in a moment, Michael. Now,
okay.
There is a slight echo when I talk, so maybe my sound coming through to you is being picked up by your mic, but it's not too bad, so we can live with that. Now, maybe
I should just put my sound a bit softer, volume down. I don't know if that is that better.
Okay, let me see. I think that's a bit better. Yes, I think that's a bit better. Okay, so look, we're talking about a court action here. Now, you mentioned the Bible, and I read your court action, and it's an absolutely unique court action. You refer to the Bible all the way through, and to Revelations and Deuteronomy and all these other parts of the Bible. I hope the judge is a Christian, because
Yes.
he's going to have to be researching the Bible to actually fully understand what you're talking about.
Yes, I hear what you say. I also want to state that this application is actually a court application. It's on affidavit, but the purpose of the application is also to make it known to all the believers in the world that there is a safe haven in this time when the new world order will suffice in the world.
Yeah.
And that's basically the primary reason for this application, to make it known. And I believe that the court that will hear this application, when it is heard, it will be in total different circumstances when this application will be heard.
Right. Now we'll get to the good and evil shortly, because the good is obviously our cause, the Boer cause, and the evil is the New World Order and its evil participants. But look, we'll get to that shortly. What I'd really like you to do is to go through the specific parts of history in South Africa that are the basis of this court action. You mentioned Blood River, for example, and Paardekraal.
Yes.
Can you take us back in history and take us through where history says, hey, these republics still belong to the Boers?
Yes, I can briefly do that. Just to also to give you a holistic background of the application, is that the members of the applicant, and they contend that their land, and that is now the Boer republics, that is the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republiek and the
Free State and the Transvaal.
Yes, the Free State and Transvaal as we know it today. That those two republics is the land or the safe haven and area of protection in the time of the enforcement of the mark, as described in Revelations 12 and 13. And then the occupation of their land will effect the fulfillment of the Blood River Covenant, in that the raising of the houses referred to in the Blood River Covenant will realize in this time. You must remember that the raising of the house in the Blood River Covenant, that the meaning thereof was never to build a temple or a church or anything like that. It was to raise a congregation, being a united group of people, as the temple of God, being the restoration of the house of King David, as set out in the Bible. Now, the primary reason why the applicant's ancestors fled from Europe and vested themselves in the Cape Colony was based and founded on their religion. Now, the applicants submit that due to their unique relationship with their God and the fact that their God has left them in them a very small remnant over in this time to worship Him, and in order for the prophecies to go into fulfillment. In other words, if you read Zephaniah 3, for instance, it says that my congregation, my scattered congregation, from where are they? They from other side the rivers of Ethiopia. And that's a prophecy that the applicant contends in the application. So the applicant's religion was under continuous threat in the 15th century by the European world, in that these leaders and their followers did not obey the voice of God. They refused correction and did not trust in God. Therefore, the applicant's ancestors fled as refugees to South Africa, as Protestant refugees. Right. Now, the applicant's ancestors, however, trusted in their God and the area behind the rivers of Ethiopia in order to bring offerings to their God. The immigration furthermore set in motion the effect of the prophecies in Revelations 3 verse 7, 19, 12, various other prophecies in the Bible, especially Zephaniah 3 as well. And the further effect of the immigration was that the enemy of God went to make war with the applicants' ancestors. This is quoted out of the Bible, who has stated, "I've kept the commandments of their God." These wars are commonly known as the Battle of Blood River, the Independence War of 1880 to 81, and then also the Anglo-Boer War. These ancestors, or our ancestors, settled in the Cape Colony during 1652, and by 1836 again suffered the same inferences as just mentioned above. And as a direct result of the contempt of their leaders in the Cape Colony towards God. The effect was an immigration of the applicants' ancestors into the wilderness known as the Great Track. And that occurred in 1836 and consisted of a small group, about 17,000 Boers, that they were poor and afflicted people who trusted in the name of their God. Part of the Great Track also resulted in the Battle of Blood River, where the people of the Voortrekkers organized a punishment commandment to wreak a cruel and inhumane murder of Piet Retief, his delegation, and the subsequent women and children against the then dominant Zulu tribe under the leadership of the tribe king known as Dingaan.
Right.
The media widely published this victory over the Zulu and referred to the applicants' ancestors as people of sound religion, true humanity, manly courage, and self-denying determination. The media furthermore contended that the community held the wrong impression of these people, in that they are indeed God's people. The media stated at the time that the religious conduct that these people have shown is as high as the most religious or civilized people in the world. Now, what I've just quoted comes out of a newspaper, the Zuid-Afrikaan, dated the 14th of June, 1839, where the diary of Andries Pretorius, the chief commander of the Battle of Blood River, his diary was taken up and published in the Zuid-Afrikaan 6 months after the Battle of Blood River.
Now the Battle of Blood River,
yes.
the Battle of Blood River was a very, very significant, incredibly significant event in the history of the Boer nation. Do you want to just explain why it was such a significant event? As we understand the history, or as we read the history, but if you refer to the source that I've just given you, the 14th of June, the Zuid-Afrikaan 14th of June, 1839, it states there that there was 38 regiments of between 9 and 10,000 Zulus at the Battle of Blood River. Now, if you do the calculation, it's more or less 320,000 Zulus against 464 Boers. That took up the weapon, and there wasn't one death after the incident. But also interesting is 7 days before the battle occurred, these Boers made a vow to God, and they repeated the vow every evening 7 times, and then that next morning the battle occurred. But what's quite interesting is that the authentic covenant is also referred to in that newspaper, or in this newspaper, the true source or the authentic source. Because in history, the principle applies that the source, the closest to the event, is the most authentic source. And this is the source that we quote, and it's widely available in all the libraries and everything. But the most important element, or the pivotal element of the Blood River covenant, was that we will raise a house to the honor of God, and where God would want the house. So if I read it to you, we would raise a house to the memory of his great name, wherever it should please him, not where it pleases us, but where it should please him. So what happened after the Blood River Covenant? 14 years after the Blood River Covenant, the Boers vested themselves in the heart of southern Africa, south of the Limpopo and north of the Orange River, formerly known as the Boer Republics. The Boer Republics gained international recognition since 1852. So in other words, the applicant contends that in terms of the Blood River Covenant,
where it pleased God was in the wilderness. Because if you read the history books, it states that if you blindly read any history on the Great Track, etc., they say of all places, these Boers vested themselves in the wilderness. Now, and when you look at Revelations 12 and 13, it says that God will prepare a place in the wilderness for the woman, and He will keep her safe out of the power of the of you can say the New World Order, as in Revelation 12 and 13. So there's a safe haven in the wilderness, and the applicant contends that the safe haven is the Boer Republic. So when you take it further, that's not really mentioned in the application, but if you take the 4-color flag and you take the tabernacle, that is also a house that was erected on Christ's special instance and request so that He could live with His nation. The tabernacles, the 4 wind directions of the tabernacle was the same colors as the 4-color. And if you read Ezekiel 37, when it says that at the end times the tabernacle will be over God's nation again, and if you read Siener van Rensburg's work, that says that the 4-color will again be over the nation, meaning the tabernacle, the house, and the house is an order. It's not an house. It is a group of people that adheres to the order of God, being the order of the tabernacle, or you can also say the Melchizedek order. And that is the order where Christ is the king and He's our leader. And each and every decision that is taken through Christ. If you look at the punishment commando that was involved with the Blood River, Battle of Blood River, Andries Pretorius was the chief commander. But when they chose him, he said, no, wait, and it's also in that newspaper, he said, no, wait, let's ask God if I must be the leader. And then they prayed to God using a method called an Urim and Thummim, where they in Afrikaans, I can't get to the English word, but they used a lood system, where they would draw, loetjies to see after they prayed whether it was fine in God's eyes for him to be the leader. So they already followed not a democratic view, but more a view of the where God is the leader and not the people.
Right.
So and then what happened after they vested themselves in the Boer republics in 1877, you can say the Transvaal, the Zuid-Afrikaanse Republic, lost its independence to the United Kingdom.
Can I just interrupt there for a second, Michael?
Yes.
Now, Michael, what happened in the 1870s was that diamonds were found at Kimberley. And you had Cecil Rhodes, who was residing in, funny enough, near Akopo. He went off to make his fortune at the big hole of Kimberley. And he did a deal with the Rothschilds in the United Kingdom. And that's when trouble broke out, because you talked about the New World Order, which is run by the big money like the Rothschilds. They came on the scene, and that's when the dispossession of those republics by the United Kingdom took place, because they wanted that money or those assets for the Rothschilds. I mean, this is making it very, very basic. Do you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, what happened there was, obviously there was they found the minerals or the diamonds, and they also on a fraudulent basis took the Kimberley off the land from Free State, from the Orange Free State. But obviously for purposes of the mining industry. And you can basically say it was swindled for almost nothing. And at that time, the Boers were very poor. And so they didn't really have money to oppose any court action.
Right.
And I know Kimberley was taken back by a court action. So, and as you rightly state, it was already the emotion of the one world or the new world order taking place there.
So what we're saying is that way back before Rhodes went into Kimberley, you already had the two Boer republics that had been formed. You had the Transvaal and you had the Free State. So they were totally independent countries that were basically invaded by the United Kingdom.
Correct.
Okay.
And yes, and also at that time already, there was lots of debates and discussions to form a union. To form a like the union that was formed in 1910. But in any event, in 1877, the South Afrikaanse Republic lost its independence, and they already entered into a war treaty with the Free State. That should they ever enter into a war with the United Kingdom, that they will fight together under the four colour.
Right.
Now, what happened is Paul Kruger, on the 8th of December, he called a gathering at Paardekraal. Now, the most amazing fact of what I'm telling you now is that between 7 and 9,000 Boers attended this meeting at Paardekraal.
Now, Paardekraal is near Krugersdorp.
Yeah, it is in Krugersdorp.
Right.
Now, so what Paul Kruger told them is that, due to the nation not adhering to the Blood River Covenant as a nation, and they're not committed and they're not honoring the covenant, that is why they lost their independence. So they then all decided that they would, they would enter into a new covenant with God, and they all brought a stone and they made a heap. They lodged a stone heap, and they made a covenant. And the covenant, in short, states that should God give their land back, then they will come to Paardekraal every year on the 16th of December to honor the Blood River Covenant. Okay, and then that was on the 13th of December when they then eventually made this new vow to God, a new covenant. But it was actually a reinstatement of the Blood River Covenant. And then on the 16th of December, while they were honoring the covenant that morning, the War of Independence broke out in Potchefstroom. Now, it's improbable to say that that's not the hand of God. It's logic to say that the whole nation appeared there, 7,000 to 9,000 people representing at least, say, 10 or 12 other people. And it was men, they were all men who appeared there in front of God. And then the Independence War broke out. And then 11 weeks later, on the 27th of February, 1881, the internationally known Battle of Amayuba occurred,
right,
where they defeated England, and they subsequently got back their independence. Now, an interesting fact that we realized about, say, 2 or 3 years ago was that, Paardekraal is exactly horizontal and vertical in the middle of Transvaal and Free State. Now, can that be a coincidence? It's in the center of the two republics. And I mean, they entered into a war treaty 2 or 3 years before the Paardekraal covenant, before they even knew they're going to enter into a new vow with God. So the sad thing is that these Boers, they only attended to the location on the 16th of December to honor the Blood River Covenant in the years 1880 to 1883. They thereafter changed the annual undertaking to appear before God Paardekraal to every 5 years. Then, obviously, so they broke the vow, by doing a vow saying that they will appear every year. They made it 5 years. And then the Anglo-Boer War between the two Boer republics and the United Kingdom during 1899 and 1902 was the effect of the applicants' ancestors' contempt towards their governments.
Okay, now before we go further on to that, Michael, I think it's important again to note that the Anglo-Boer War happened because gold was found on the Witwatersrand. And once again, the New World Order, in the face of people like the Rothschilds, who basically run the government in the United Kingdom, demanded that the British go in and take back or take the Transvaal and the Free State away from the Boers. It was all about money. If gold had not been found, that land would have been retained by the Boer republics. This is where good and evil comes in. This comes back to the spiritual war that we're talking about on this channel. Sorry, go back to
definitely. You 100% correct. But what also comes up while you made that statement is that the Christ says in the New Testament that you can believe and this and this and that, but your works is important. But then he says that the devil knows the word by heart. So yes, it is like that. There was gold, and also after the gold, then the United Kingdom wanted its its citizens to have a right of voting. And Paul Kruger rejected that. He wasn't prepared to give them that right because he knew that after a few years they will in any event lose their land, because then the UK will United Kingdom will.
But I think the important point, Michael. I think the important point on that, Michael, is that before gold was discovered on the Witwatersrand, the voting system had always been the way it was. I think it was 5 years you had to be in the Transvaal before you could vote, or something like that.
Yes, it was the time frame. Yes.
They
wanted to decrease the time frame.
The suggestion that it was because of the voting that the British invaded the Transvaal is a load of crap. The reason they invaded the Transvaal was because of gold. That was just used as an excuse.
Yes, definitely. They wanted the minerals, and with the peace treaty of Vereniging, when they debated the terms of the agreement, they even tendered all the gold fields to the United Kingdom, and which was rejected. They wanted the full Monty. But it is true what you say, Scott. I agree with that. But you must also understand that the location of Transvaal and Free State, looking holistically at the prophecies and all those things, is an extreme important location, and that is why the evil came in. And yes, they used the gold as the method to instigate this, but I can also say to God, then it would never have happened. But it's also part and in God's will that it happens, so that me and you can have this conversation today, so that there's a remnant ready to repair this location for the purpose it is here for.
Now, what's really interesting, and you touched on this just a moment ago, is that in these days of the Second Boer War between 1899 and 1902, a man emerges from nowhere. he's got no education. His mother taught him to read using the Bible. It's the only book he ever referred to. His name was, of course, Siener von Rensburg. Now, his prophecies are quite extraordinary when you look in context of what has happened to the Boer nation long after he died. Do you want to bring into context what Siener von Rensburg said and your application, and where what he said is going to happen with the Boer nation?
Yes, the bottom line that what Siener says is that the four color will again suffice over the nation, but you must also interpret his visions on a spiritual basis. Now, that four color that he refers to, as I previously stated with the tabernacle, the meaning of being a house, is that is the purpose of his vision, saying that the four color will again be over the nation. And also in Ezekiel 37, it states that right. The tabernacle will be over the nation. But the thing about Siener von Rensburg is that there's lots of people that debate that his visions aren't authentic or so. But if you go back in history, it's also there's sources that I can confirm this with, substantiate what I'm saying with, is that Jan Smuts, he actually appointed a commission of inquiry at the Transvaal Provisional Division, the now known North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria, to investigate all these visions of Siener in his time.
Right.
And the effect thereof, or the conclusion was that all Siener's visions was authentic in that time. And they basically looked at visions that came into fulfillment in his time. So Jan Smuts actually invited him after that to a meeting, and he asked him to open with prayer. And afterwards he asked him what must he do to gain the trust of the Boer nation. And Siener van Rensburg told him, well, call out a new election. And, the rest is history. But the thing is, yes, Siener van Rensburg, if you compare his visions, he also had the vision that he says in the last days, just before the four color will rise over the nation, that he sees all these white tents coming into the Transvaal and Free State. And that actually is the effect of what we're doing now, starting to do now, is to get the message out to the rest of the world that this will be the safe haven in the time of the mark of the beast, as set out in Revelations 12 and 13. So there's lots of visions of Siener van Rensburg that actually coincide with what we're doing now and how we interpret this whole application.
All right, well, now let's get back to the Boer War, because we're talking about, in context, why the Boer republics should be returned to the Boer people.
Yes. So I just want to, with the end of the history of this application, it ends where the Anglo-Boer War was settled. It was never lost. It was settled with the United Kingdom. They entered into the the Treaty of Vereniging, the Peace Treaty of Vereniging.
Right.
And I've actually read a lot about that, but the instigators it was actually the United Kingdom who initiated the Peace Treaty of Vereniging. It wasn't the Boers. They wanted peace. So, they had lots of meetings, and they had a type of a referendum, the Boers, in order to make the decision, and then they decided that they will enter into this peace treaty with the United Kingdom. But the sad thing of this peace treaty of Vereniging is that one of the terms of the agreement was that the two Boer republics should be self-governed as soon as possible. Okay? And you won't believe it, in 1906, from 1906 to 1910 to 1909, these two Boer republics were self-governed. They got back their independence and they governed themselves. And the history after that shows that they would have been they would have received full independence, not long after that. But what they then did is they swindled that right. And that's also the influence, like you earlier rightly stated, with the architects of the New World Order and the money system and the federal system, where profit and all those things are the main concern. And they with Jan Smuts, requested a union of South Africa. And it's almost like when you go to court because someone stole 2 of your cows. Now the court gives a judgment stating you can have 2 cows back, and then you demand 4. On what basis can you do that? And that's what our ancestors wrongly did. Because in retrospect, if you look at the borders of these 2 Boer republics and say we adhere to that the agreement with the UK, and we received our independence back in that time, there wouldn't even have been anything like apartheid today in South Africa. So it's quite sad what everybody did for money and for economy, etc., etc. And it reminds me almost of the 1992 referendum where they voted for transformation, the yes or the no vote, and everybody voted mainly for sport, rugby, to compete international. But the last thing they actually thought of or took into consideration was our great godly history and the impact that will have on ourselves. And today we reap the fruits. And, we're under an appointed punishment because of our disregard to our history and our ancestral godly relationship that we had. I mean, just to look at Paardekraal, they on the morning where they lay down the new vow of Blood River at Paardekraal, the War of Independence breaks out. I mean, the UK at that time was the greatest nation in the world, and 11 months later, a few Boers defeated them at the Battle of Mayuba, and that's not the Boers, that's the work of God.
Yeah.
And in the book of Joshua, these I think I've told you this before, but these 2 spies came in, and this woman harbored them, and she said, you must remember, the citizens in this town, in Jericho, they're not scared of you, they're scared of your God. And when the Anglo-Boer War broke out in 1899, the first thing the English did was they went to Paardekraal and they took the stones, and there's 2 stories. They say they threw them in the sea or the ocean, or they took them to the Vaal River and they threw them in the river. But that was one of the first things the English people did. So that must also say a lot, So
yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay, so up to what happened in 1994. What we're actually saying is, well, even before then, when the Union of South Africa was formed, it went against the whole idea of those independent Boer republics, which were basically stolen from the Boers originally.
Yes. It was basically stolen twice. It was stolen, as you rightly said, with Kimberley first. The
1877.
Yes. And then afterwards with the Anglo-Boer War. And then after that again, they threw the hands of Jan Smuts. And I know lots of people think Jan Smuts was a great icon. But I have a book here that where it shows that Jan Smuts was the father of the holistic theory, and he was an atheist. He didn't believe in Christ at all. So it's quite interesting that the 80% of our whole nation ran after him and followed him, or 70%. All his views and ideals, and they still do that.
Yeah. Well, the major point here is that the Boer nation needs to turn back to God, because that's the only way that they're going to get their land back. Now, Who are the parties to your application, Michael?
Yeah, it is the applicant is the Association and Coalition for the Restoration of the Boer Republics. It's an association and a coalition of individuals, and they're open to affiliation to or coalition with an association with other groups that share the same objectives as what they do, and so if any other group or individual in the world that shares this, for something interesting, I received a WhatsApp voice note a few weeks ago from a guy that he actually lives in Australia, but he's a Dutch. He was born in Holland, and he asked, yes, who's going to be the leader of the Saxon Israelites in South Africa? That was his comment, and he had a whole story about that. Just told you over in this program. He knows it exactly, and he knows and understands, him and lots of other people in the Netherlands and Australia, for that part. They know that they must prepare themselves to come to South Africa, because the purpose of the Blood River Covenant, obviously, is to erect a house and to raise the fallen house of King David, so that for the purposes of the kingdom to come, in terms of the Bible. So they know that. They're not even South African. And I don't want to go into that, but he also, on a miraculous basis, in Australia, got hold of a South African magazine, and he read it, and he saw, yes, who's these people? They almost write in Dutch, but they South Africans. And his whole spirit was awoken. And he made it his life mission to study the history of South Africa. He's been here 2 or 3 times, but his whole family and his congregations, they're all on their way to South Africa, confirming the prophecy of Siener van Rensburg that said he sees all these tents.
Right.
And this will be the safe haven. So, but that's the applicant. So they're open for coalition and association. And then the respondents, it's the state president and 4 ministers, Minister of Home Affairs, Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, and then the Minister of Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs, and the Minister of International Affairs. The application was brought here in September, and it's currently opposed.
Right. Now, what are the grounds for the application? Are they, just in summary?
Yeah, there's 6 grounds. The first one is the restoration of the formerly known internationally acknowledged Boer Republics, Suid-Afrikaanse Republiek and Republiek of Oranje-Vrystaat. And then the other ground is due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The government's participation and support of the World Health Organization and implementation of the New World Order that entails compulsory vaccination, track and trace technology, and the New World Economy, etc., initiated the application. Also interesting on this point is with the state president's address, the State of the Nation address, when he just became president, he said that it was also extremely confusing at that time. He referred to this new economy that's going to be implemented in South Africa. Mm-hmm. And, for us being on the brinks of a depression that time, or recession, going into a depression, it was quite funny, but it makes sense what he said at that time. And he also, in that time, confirmed his cooperation to enforce the principles and objectives of the New World Order. He actually said that a few times on national TV. Then the applicant and its members realized that the vaccination is the mark of the beast, and that we are currently living in prophetic times. So the applicant and his members contend that the Boer republics, that is the location in the wilderness provided to them by God, the land is the safe haven and area of protection in the time of the enforcement of the mark, described in Revelations 12 and 13, and other prophecies, and the occupation of the land will effect the fulfillment of the Blood River Covenant, in that the raising of the house, as referred to in the Blood River Covenant, will realize in this time. The raising of the house will give effect to the sealing of prophecies and the thereafter restoration of the house of King David, because the house of King David will have the effect of the kingdom that will come. These statements is supported and substantiated with events and occurrences that took place in our history, as I previously stated, and the applicant and its members contend that the right to the restoration of the Boer Republic is primarily based and founded on their history. The applicant's history is again primarily founded on their unique relation, religion, belief, and opinion. The restoration of the Boer Republics therefore constitutes a vertical relationship between the applicant's members of their God, which relationship consists of obligations, the interpretation of their God's word, and the application of their God's word. The obligation in order to restore the Boer Republic is thus founded in the applicant's religion in order to participate in the fulfillment of the prophecies as set out in the God's word. International occurrences that took place before and in the pandemic time justifies the request for the restoration of the Boer Republic, because in terms of the applicant's history or our history in South Africa, we are entitled. We're not only entitled, but that is our primary duty as a believer to restore the house of David. And when you compare the contents of the Blood River Covenant, that is the reason. If you look at the 7 congregations in Revelations, and specifically the Revelations 3 verse 7, where they refer to the congregation of Philadelphia. And if you go study any biblical writer or author's work, they are all at idem that the time frame of the 6th congregation took place in the 19th century. So in other words, in the time of the Great Track. And this prophecy of the 6th congregation starts where it says, "For you, I give the key of David, and I will open the door." Now, you don't have to be a professor in biblical studies to understand that the key of David, of King David, that is the resurrection of the fallen house of David. And in that time frame, our ancestors started that, and in that time frame, the Battle of Blood River occurred. So if you do the comparison there, very interesting. So then the application and its members were thus in peaceful, undisturbed possession prior to 18th of March 2020 of their land, known as the former international acknowledged Boer republics. So in other words, if it wasn't for the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent enforcement of the mark and the track and trace and all these things, and if you look at it internationally, and we refer to the application to lots of source documents relating to the World Health Organization, the New World Order, the participation of Bill Gates, Melinda Gates, various foundations.
Right.
And then obviously where they initiate the vaccine with nanotechnology, you've had various conversations about that. So we're moving to that part where without this mark or vaccine, you will not be able to participate in the economy. And Revelations 12 and 13 state that without the mark, you will not be able to do that. And our members are those people who will refuse the mark. And there is a place, it's confirmed in the prophecies, Revelations 12 and 13, that is prepared by God for the protection of God's children.
You know what I find so interesting, Michael, is you just referred to Philadelphia in the US, and that's
yes.
where the Amish people are. I mean, I've been to Philadelphia and I've seen the Amish people.
Yes.
They still are, they're like the 1800s. They don't use electricity. They don't have radios. they just farm like they've farmed for centuries. You know, they are very, very religious. It's almost like a carbon copy of the Boers in South Africa who have obviously adopted technology, but the Amish people haven't.
Yes.
They still drive around in horse-driven carts and things like that.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, it shows. And Philadelphia also means brotherly love.
Yeah.
So and that is at that time. And if you also take the the Battle of Blood River in the where they assembled these ox wagons, and how these people, quite interesting. There was 57 ox wagons in the Laar of Blood River. Now, if you go look in the Concordance, in the Strong's Concordance, the number 57 refers to unity and immorality. So immortality, not immorality, immortality. Sorry, that's quite out of line. Immortality. It's also a resemblance. If you look at the Ark, Noah's Ark, the little casket that Moses was nourished in, and then obviously the tabernacle, and then this assembly of these wagons and the people that were kept safe in that time. It all has a correlation to faith and to secure a remnant for the purpose and objection of the prophecies, of the fulfillment of the prophecies.
Right. Now, what is the current status of the application?
Okay, look, the application is opposed, and we're going to bring an application to join the Speaker of Parliament by agreement between the parties, the State Attorney and ourselves, and then also then the respondents, the state and the President, they will have to file their answering affidavit. Right. So that's the current status.
Let's just say you win. Okay, they adopt your application and say, yes, these two regions have to become independent again. How would that all be set up?
Yeah, look, yes, so that's a question that's asked many times, but I believe that, that's in God's hands, but at that time, we will live in different times. It won't be the state of affairs as we know it now. So it will be totally different.
Yeah. Well, we are living in different times right now. I mean, in South Africa,
yes,
it's dramatically changed from what it was back in pre-1994. Yes.
Yeah. Look, I have, sorry to interrupt you, but I have thought about this question many times. And when you look at Siener van Rensburg's prophecies as well, in regards to this and the Boer republics and what must happen before that and after that and how it will happen, I read things like there will be a war in the Third World War. It will happen simultaneously with the Third World War and also with the independence of Ireland. That's also one of the things. And another thing that Siener van Rensburg said is that he said that the trigger for the Third World War would be a very well-known person in England, in the UK, that will pass away, like the Queen or a government official. A very well-known and loved person by the citizens will pass away just before the war breaks out. So that's a trigger to look at. And then after that, everything will happen. But you must also remember that in the book of Daniel, they were in exile in Babylon. And he read the prophecies and he knew that after 70 years, the exile will be uplifted. But regardless of that, he still went into prayer and deep prayer, and everything worked out in accordance to God's will. So as time goes on, we will see how it will work out. But as I said earlier on, I don't think this application will be heard in the forum that we know it. So that's my view, how I can work it out or iron it out.
Right. Now, you have a website, don't you? What's your website?
The website is, you can go on boerrepublica.org. Boerrepublica.org.
Republica. So it's with an E on the end.
Yes, BOERE, republica.org. And then there's another one, a web page.
Yeah.
It is www.
Yep.
.volksvergadering .co.za.
Okay, so it's www.volksvergadering.co.za. So if people want to go and just follow up what we've been discussing tonight, please go and check out those two web pages. And I believe you can actually join as a member, or you can just have your email address so you can get information.
Yes. The boerrepublic.org is still under construction at the moment, but within about 2 days it will.
It will so they can just put that in their diary.
Yeah, or just like the page and join.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Now, I think what I find most fascinating about this application is that it's not just civil law that's been brought into it, but it's God's law that's been brought into it. And in other words, there's a lot of references in the application to various verses in the Bible. And it makes it quite a unique application. Who is actually going to be hearing this? Is it going to be, do you know who the judge is going to be?
No, we don't know yet who the judge will be, but, the matter, after the pleadings have closed, then obviously, then you apply for a trial date and then it gets allocated to a judge. But as you rightly stated, Scott, this whole application is based on biblical law and not on any common law principle, really, except for the for the reference of that prior to the COVID-19, applicants and members had undisturbed possession of their land for the purpose as set out, that the events that occurred made them realize that it's time now to start with fulfilling the terms of the Blood River Covenant by erecting the house.
Well, what I find very, very interesting about the document is that in the event South Africa does come back into the hands of the minority groups, it really is a very powerful document for a basis for that happening, especially when it comes to the two republics, because it sets out the case.
Yeah, definitely. And, just to speculate, when that happens, or in that regime, there's also a chapter in the Bible in Isaiah 32 that actually explains that regime, where the people will live. And when you compare the contents of this application and the contents of Isaiah 32, the reader or the listener will realize that we are busy with prophetic work and not. This is not really. This is God's law and not the people's law. And if you look at Moses and Aaron, they, God told them, listen, you must go speak to the pharaohs because the nation has to move. They have to, they have to go now.
Yeah.
And we don't know on what basis they did it, but they followed God's. They were obedient to God, and they went there, and they debated the issue. And obviously, the pharaohs denied them that right, and then the plagues came. But what the applicant and its members contend, and they believe, is that you cannot just sit back and do nothing, especially if you have cognizance of our background, our history, the covenants, the vows, then, and the prophecies in the Bible, and look at the times that we live in today. And if you look on social media and the views of people that, and the effect of this mark and this vaccine that will prohibit you of buying or selling, and it corrugates and it strokes exactly with Revelations 12 and 13 with the mark of the beast.
Right.
And without that, it will be peremptory. Without the mark, you cannot buy or sell. You cannot fly, you cannot travel, you cannot this, you cannot that. I cannot go into court, I cannot do this, I cannot do that. So obviously, one has to, at some point, the listeners and other people, you have to come to a point in your life, living in South Africa, knowing that you're not only here to watch rugby on a Saturday, which I don't watch at all, and or have a braai and drink until you fall. That's not our purpose. Why we are, because we have a duty to ensure that God's prophecies comes into fulfillment, and they will come into fulfillment. But we are the remnant, and we have to all work together. And it's slowly but surely starting to show, like the farmers and the people coming together. And there's also a very interesting story where General Boer was one of the rebels in 1940, and he also walked with Siener van Rensburg to Southwest Africa, because Siener van Rensburg also said that Germany is going to assist us, to protect us. And that story of Lüderitz, with the harbor of Lüderitz. Mm-hmm. But now General Boer, all he wanted to do was he wanted to fight. But Siener van Rensburg said, we're not here to fight. We are to give documents to the Southwest Germans, the Germans in Southwest, for one day. It's going to have an effect for the purpose of where we now. But Boers didn't want to do that. And one day they were in a shooting incident where he was shot, and he had a small little Bible in his pocket, and the bullet entered the Bible. And when he opened the Bible, so it saved his life, the Bible in his pocket. And when he opened the Bible, the last part that the bullet, where he opened it, I can't remember the exact chapter in the Bible, but it said that not by your power or by your strength, but by the grace of God will you defeat the enemy. Do you understand? So that was the message for him, but that's also our message. It's if you look at our history and all God's people and his children in the Bible, it was never through their power, but it's through the strength and through the grace of God that something is achieved, because we have a guarantee. When you believe in the prophecies and when you read Revelations 12 and 13 and the time that we live in, we have a guarantee that there's a safe haven and we will be protected by this system, this new world order system, because we will be kept out of the power of the system, and it's a guarantee that we have. So we guarantee. So, but what we have to do is, you have to stand up and start walking towards a direction, and you have to start adhering to God's word and this covenants. And the Prophetic covenant is, in my view, and various other people and most of our members, or all of our members, view that that is the place where the nation will unite. It's at Paardekraal in Krugersdorp. Right. The whole nation will unite, because then we will do God's will. It's like if I ask my daughter to pack her clothes on the left side of the cupboard neatly, and she does it neatly on the right side of the cupboard, that's not my will. She's not doing my will. That's what we do. Our nation, we have this godly history, God-filled history, like you read in the Old Testament with the Israeli people, and all these wonders that occurred. And we have exactly the same, but we just like that people. we tend to rather run for the soccer and the rugby match and the braai every Saturday by, in contrast, going on our knees and to unite in terms of God's way, not ours.
I just want to say we've got about 700 people watching at the moment. Please, guys, remember to subscribe to be kept informed, and ring the bell to get the updates. We have live streams most nights here on this channel, and we also will be posting other videos as well, but we'll be focusing on a specific area which relates to investigating corruption in the ANC and the EFF. Now, my guest tonight is Michael Lombard, who's an attorney, and he's got an application before the courts in South Africa calling for the 2 Boer republics to be returned to the Boer nation. And it's a very, very interesting document. Is that document available on your website, Michael?
Yes, it will be in 2 days' time. The document will be available, and all the pleadings, as the pleadings progress, we will post all the pleadings on the website.
Right. Now, one thing we've just touched on is the importance of people working together. And this is something I've been fighting for months with different groups. And thankfully, some of them are now starting to collaborate and work together. How important is that in your point of view?
It's extremely important. If I go back, if I refer back to our history, in 1880 at Paardekraal, where these people representing the nation came together and they restated the covenant of Blood River, and then the War of Independence immediately broke out, and we got our land back. Right. The same as in Joshua, where after they erected the stones, in the Bible, God gave them their land. They first had to do that before the land was given back, and it's a direct request from God. They asked, if God gives us our land back, we will come together at this place every year to honor the Blood River covenant here in Paardekraal.
I actually had as a guest the fellow who has refurbished the Paardekraal monument. He's actually been involved with others in the area in actually because it was really run down, and they fixed it up, and it's looking really good again. It's so sad to see that happening to such historical and important symbols of the history, isn't it?
Yes, but you must also remember that also biblical principle is that God's people they don't really build monuments. Eh? It says that you must make a heap of stones.
Right.
To the honor of God, and then why? So that your children will one day ask, what happened here? And why is this stone here? And but interesting enough, just as the New World Order and the Rothschilds hijacked Kimberley for purposes of the diamonds and also to vest their evil ways and protocols, they did the same there at Paardekraal, because that monument that they built, that is that's not in accordance with our belief. We're happy with the heap of stones, and we have one there at the back of that monument. And I must say that, and I say it with I'm proud to say this, that as soon as we restore the Boer republics, that all and any monuments will be broken down. It will become a sovereign area where only God and God's principles are important, and no man demands statue or so is important.
Right.
So there's lots of people that is put off because of that monument that they, or that, what do you call it? It's a, the monument that they built there. They refused to go there because of the monument. But the thing is, the monument is there because the nation doesn't go there.
Right.
See?
Now, there's a very interesting comment by Dagbreker. And don't forget, guys, to put your questions in the side chat. Okay, now the question from Dagbreker, or the comment by Dagbreker, says, during that time, this is a time when diamonds were found, Griqualand West was much larger. So it was probably an argument between the Free State British North Cape and Griqualand. Well, what happened when part of Griqualand West was annexed by the British to incorporate Kimberley is a very, very interesting discussion that you might know a little bit about, Michael, but there was a spot called David's Grave, and apparently the line between David's Grave and I think it was Kuruman or something like that, there was like a direct line. That was a boundary between the Free State and the Griqualand West. And apparently what the British did was they actually moved David's Grave, because it's just a pile of small stones, and moved it to a different location so that Kimberley was no longer within the Free State. Because in those days, you got to understand, there wasn't a town in Kimberley, it was just like bush. So, it wasn't like they were going to move a town from one state of the Free State to Griqualand West. But the suggestion was that this grave was moved, and then the British said, okay, now it's actually moved so much that Kimberley is now, or the big hole of Kimberley is now on the other side of the line in Griqualand West. We won't have to fight the Boers. So we will annex just a part of Griqualand West from the Griqua people so that we can actually then do what we like in that particular area, which is what they did. They were just completely callous when it came to just the greed. It was incredible.
Yes, very crafty.
Yeah. All right. Now, is there anything else you'd like to talk about, David, that we haven't covered in your application? Anything important?
Let me just see there's not unless there's other questions that you have, Scott.
Not really. I think we've covered. We've covered everything.
Yes,
I don't see any questions popping up on the side chat, which is fine.
The incidents, that we refer to, it's let me just see here. Occurrences. Yes, there's quite a few interesting occurrences, but one of the interesting things, I don't know if you are aware of that. Let me just see here.
I've got a question here for you, Michael. Yes. Bruce, by the way, your earlier question is Michael's court case against the ANC to get the land back, or who is he taking to court? I think we've covered that. But Bruce has asked, will English-speaking whites be allowed to live in these republics?
Yes, of course. The association that you must have is, and again, Scott, it's not the criteria to enter the republics is you must be a believer of God Almighty.
You must be a Christian.
Because, yes, you must remember that they are, it's referred to as the Boer republics, but the criteria is, there was a remnant that came to South Africa of the scattered congregation, and they vested themselves here, and this beautiful history, this godly history occurred. But the thing is, the purpose of these people, of our ancestors, was to prepare a safe haven, a place to be kept safe out of the power of the New World Order, the beast. Yeah. And so that you can live here without taking a mark or a vaccine. And we believe that. The applicants, the members. I believe that. And this is the area, because when you look at our history, it all coincides with where we are now.
Yeah, well, I have to say to you, Michael, that if it came about and if I was accepted, I would be on the next flight going back to South Africa, because I really miss South Africa. Now, guys, I'm going to be wrapping up this live stream very shortly. Michael, is there something you'd like to say to people watching the live stream now, just in closing, a message that you have for people?
Yes, my message would be to write down the webpage and to ensure that you at least read the document. And the document is a very good summary of the time that we live in today with the COVID-19 compared to our history, and also taking into consideration the prophecies. And, I'm speaking hypothetically now, is that whether you believe that the contents of what we're saying is right or wrong, why don't you just read this and see what happens? Because the guy that I referred to earlier on that lives in the Netherlands, he's an Australian. He's a Dutchman, but he lives in Australia. He read a book when he was 12 years old, a magazine of South Africa. And while he read it, God Almighty woke up his spirit, and he realized that he's one of us and that he has to come, him and his family. And they're preparing, they have a group that's preparing to come to South Africa. And it also coincides with what Siener van Rensburg said, that all these people will come to South Africa. This will be the safe haven. So when you take the mark, you're going to be doomed. And you can read Revelation 12 and 13. So my message is, take the time, read the document. It's not a long document. It's a very interesting document. And pray about that. Go on your knees and ask God to lead you and to open your eyes and your ears, and that He will give it to you in your heart so that you can come home like the lost son. We must all come home, and our home it's a guarantee that we will be safe in our house and in our home.
Right.
That's my message.
And that's when Siener van Rensburg's prophecies will have been fulfilled.
Correct, yes.
Now, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you don't mind, Michael, after I've just thanked everybody for joining us, is I'm going to ask you to close in prayer. Do you mind doing that for us?
No, not at all.
Okay, fantastic. All right, guys, look, thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed the live stream. I found it fascinating, and really this document is quite extraordinary. I've never seen an court application like it, and great job you did with that, Michael.
Thank you.
Now, for the moderators, thanks, guys, for the great job that you guys have done again in the side chat, looking after things for me. For those who've joined us tonight, thank you so much for joining us, and please, everybody, take care and be safe. I'm going to ask Michael to close this live stream with a prayer, and over to you, Michael.
Thank you. Father, we thank you for all your blessings, and we come to you tonight in the name of your Son, our King, our Savior, our rock. Father, we thank you for everything that you do and for all the blessings that you give us, and we also thank you for this opportunity, Father, to equip us with knowledge of your word, with ears and eyes to see and understand the prophecies as far as it is your will. Father, we also thank you, and I also pray tonight that all the listeners may fill their lamps with oil so that they will be ready, Father, when your great day comes. Father, because we are living in times, and every day that we live, us and our ancestors, our forefathers, with one purpose, Father, to receive the blessing of your kingdom that will come. And your kingdom is the house of King David, who will be erected. Father, we thank you for everything, and we ask you, Father, to bless our people, to bless all your children, Father, to keep them safe in their homes, on the roads, at their work. And Father, I confirm tonight that us who live in faith in your word, Father, will never have any loss. We will never be hungry or scared, because you are our rock and our salvation. We thank you for that, Father. Thank you for everything in our King's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Michael. It's
Thank
been
you
an
very
absolute
much.
pleasure talking to you. And look, please keep in touch with Marlena. And if there are
I
any
will.
developments with the application, we'd love to hear about them, and we'll get you back on another live stream.
100%. Have a blessed evening. Thank you, Scott. And good night to all the listeners, and have a blessed day and evening. Thank you.
And what I'll do is I'll put the website link down below this video in the description so people can go to that as well.
Thank you. Go well. Thank you.
Okay, take care, everybody. Have a great evening. See you tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Johannesburg time with our next live stream. And once again, thank you, Michael, and take care. Bye,
Thank you.
guys. And I'll leave the side chat open for a few minutes so you can chat in there. Alrighty. Take care.